Welcome to the Sustainability Commission meeting. Our meetings are broadcast live on Glendale TV, viewable on Spectrum Cable Channel 6 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. Meetings are also streamed in high definition on the city's webpage, glendaleca.gov/live, on youtube.com/myglendale, and on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire devices using a free app called ScreenWeave and choosing Glendale TV from the menu. Meetings are also archived on the city's website for viewing at any time at glendaleca.gov/agendas. Please call 818-548-4013 for program schedules. DVDs of the proceedings are available for purchase in the city clerk's office. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. Public comments on a specific agenda item will be taken when that agenda item is discussed. If you have questions about matters on the agenda or requests for assistance, please call the Management Services Department at 818-548-4844 during regular business hours. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Bazemore?
Here.
Commissioner Bartrosov?
Here.
Commissioner Kartunian?
Here.
Vice Chair Pinkerton? Chair Werner?
Here.
Ex officio Borisov? Ex officio Kudo?
Here.
Next agenda item is 1A, Pledge of Allegiance.
Yes, please stand. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And at this time, we'd like to acknowledge that we are holding this meeting in the city of Glendale on the traditional land of the Gabrielino Tongva people. We would like to pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, and the Tongva communities who continue to be stewards of this land.
Next agenda item is 1C, Report regarding posting of agenda. The agenda for the December 1st, 2022 meeting of the Sustainability Commission was posted November 23rd, 2022 on the bulletin board outside City Hall. Next item is 2, approval of minutes. 2A, approval of the minutes of the Commission regular meeting held November 3rd, 2022.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments on the agenda from last month? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted?
Make the motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, roll call, please.
Commissioner Bazemore?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartrosov?
Yes.
Commissioner Kartunian?
Yes.
Vice Chair Pinkerton? Chair Werner?
Yes.
Yep. Next item is 3, board member and staff comments.
Okay, would any board members like to make any comments? Yeah, we should probably change that to commissioner and staff comments since we're commissioners, not board members, technically. Also, we should mention that Chair Bartrosov is participating from an offsite location that was published as part of the agenda. And would the staff have any comments?
No staff comments.
Okay. Next agenda item.
Next agenda item is oral communications. Discussion is limited to items within the jurisdiction of the Sustainability Commission. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Sustainability Commission members may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff for investigation and report. And at this moment, we may have a caller on the line. Yes. Hello, Craig.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Hi, Craig. You're on the line for oral communications. You
Okay.
have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Commission. My name is Craig Cadwallader with Surfrider South Bay, and I just wanted to address the Commission and applaud City Council Tuesday night for approving directions to City staff to draft an ordinance for the foodware plastic waste reduction ordinance, and I do hope that goes forward quickly. I wanted to mention that Burbank is working on what I hope will be very similar ordinance, and they are planning to bring that to council in January. And I would love to see Glendale beat them to the punch. And also wanted you to know that in the City of Los Angeles Energy, Climate Change, Environmental Justice and River Committee meeting today, the committee approved 3 items to come to City Council, which is probably why Jennifer isn't there now. But it's coming back on next Tuesday, December 6th, for a polystyrene ordinance, an expanded bag ban ordinance, and a zero waste city facilities ordinance moving forward quickly. And also next Tuesday, the City of San Diego is having the second reading, and we hope adoption of their long-delayed polystyrene ordinance. So things are moving forward. I've also spoken to folks in Pasadena and Alhambra and Beverly Hills on a similar ordinance. So I hope all the cities can move forward now rapidly, and I hope the Commission will support a ordinance when it comes back. So I just wanted to mention that and appreciate the opportunity to address the Commission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Was that the only comment?
There are no other callers on the line.
Okay, let's move on to the next agenda item then.
Next agenda item is 5 action items. 5A is Sustainability Commission Work Plan 2023. 1, motion for the Sustainability Commission to provide direction to staff regarding priorities and projects for their annual work plan for 2023.
Good evening, Chairperson Werner and Sustainability Commissioners. I'd actually like Chairperson Werner to introduce this item for the Commissioners, and then we can have a bit of discussion after that.
Okay, thank you. And thank you also for preparing some talking points for me here. Today we'll be discussing and developing our 2023 work plan for the Sustainability Commission. The purpose of the work plan is to establish strategic priorities for the Commission and to guide our work through the year. We should think of the plan as an outline of priorities that can be used to fill in the details as we work through our plan throughout the year. In preparation of the session, we were asked to submit our ideas and goals for the Commission, and our comments have been used to develop this session. So we have a work plan session outline where the first activity will be to rank the top priorities, where we'll discuss and vote on the Commission's top priorities for the year. That'll take about 15 minutes. Activity 2 is to define those priorities and to review and discuss them. And activity 3 is to choose some projects that relate to those priorities. And activity 4 will be to select a lead or champion of that, that activity or priority. And after that, we'll allow public comments and possibly earlier in the session if people call in before that. And then based on public comments, if any, we will make some changes, possibly based on the comments, or it will be an opportunity to do that if we so desire or want to make some adjustments. And then at that point, we'll vote on the work plan. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson Werner. Just a couple of things before we get going. I'm going to hand over to Elizabeth, who's going to be the Master of Ceremonies for this session. Elizabeth has put a lot of work and effort and planning into this session, so we think it'll be very, very productive the way she's laid it out. With respect to the commissioners, we are going to be fairly strict on the times as we go through this exercise and this project. We expect the whole thing to take roughly between maybe an hour to an hour and a half. But once we get through the exercise, I think it's going to be very beneficial to the commission going forward. It's going to be beneficial to staff, help the commission achieve the priorities and the objectives in the work plan. It's going to be able for us to tee up correct staff members and bring information to the commission on a timely basis. So we think that this is a really worthwhile exercise. But as I said, Elizabeth has really worked hard, put a lot of effort into this. So I'd like to turn it over to her to take us through the session.
Thank you. Yes, so as our chair mentioned, we have like 4 activities and we have timelines for each one of them. Throughout this session, we will have timers on the presentation to help time with activities so you know how much time you have. That will be available for anyone, for our commissioner and for staff who are joining virtually. Some activities we won't be able to have a timer on the screen, so we'll be using the timer here on the dais, or you can see a red dot, and also Nora here will be lifting signs to indicate when you have 1 minute, 30 seconds, and time is up. I understand Commissioner Bart Trosuf won't be able to see such signals, so we'll try to do our best to help communicate how much time is available. And Commissioner Bart Trosuf, if you decide to speak in at a point when the time is up, we can allow you to speak, given that there is a bit of a delay to understand in understanding of that. Yes, so we'll go through the session. We just want to remind, as our chair said, that this is meant to set out the strategies and priorities. This is meant to be more of an outline. Details will be in the implementation. And before we discuss much, we are already assuming that the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan is already a responsibility of the Commission. So we'll include that in the work plan, but won't necessarily be one of the priorities you'll be discussing it here, because we're already going to assume that that will be a role of the Commission over the next year, is to input into the Climate Action Plan. So you won't necessarily be voting on the cap if you don't see it here. We're just assuming you'll do it already. The priorities and things that you will be voting on will be other areas on top of the Climate Action Plan that you want to do in the work plan. Okay, so next up is Activity 1, Ranking Priorities. And how this activity will go is that you will rank your these priorities from highest 1 to lowest 7. We're going to give you about 7 minutes, I believe, to discuss. And then you'll be able to have 1 minute to independently decide. So we'll give you a minute to think about after the discussion. And then we'll take about 4 minutes to cast the vote. And how we'll cast the vote is we'll go around the dais and ask every member to tell us their rankings of the priorities. And we'll have Nora here will input your vote into our form, and after the end of the vote, we'll be able to generate the results. So we'll be able to generate based on the opinions of the commission, overall, what is the number 1 priority and what's the lowest priority. We'll show the results here on the screen, and then you'll have 3 minutes to discuss discuss and change the results. Any questions before we move on?
Yeah, I had one question. So seeing as we do have 2 commissioners missing, I'm wondering, 1 ex officio and 1 commissioner, when it comes to the last step with this, where it's selecting a lead, will there be an opportunity, for instance, for us to speak with those commissioners? How are we imagining that process working, seeing as there are a few people missing, and that is a big part of this, is assigning commissioners to those roles. So, thanks.
So, Commissioner Bazemore, so we'll select the leads from here, and if there's open positions, maybe we can come back at the next meeting and fill in who those leads would be. So that's not going to be an issue. We can.
Looks like Commissioner Pinkerton has just shown up, so
Okay, thank you.
less of an issue. So, thank you.
And as a reminder, the priorities that we listed here, we reached out to you earlier and you gave us all these priorities, so this is where this list came from.
Right.
And for the record, Commissioner Pinkerton has entered the dais and is present.
Okay.
Would you like us to repeat the instructions for the activity? So next is we'll give you 7 minutes to discuss the priorities amongst yourselves on which you may think, on which you decide is the top priority. This timer is 5 minutes, but we'll give you 7 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone like to start us off?
So the two that really struck out to me when I first saw this list of priorities are the green spaces and the urban heat island. I think that these two are really important, especially as it gets hotter every summer and temperatures are rising. And installing more green spaces will definitely help with reducing the effects of the urban heat island. So focusing on one, I feel like we'll end up having to focus on green spaces anyways. So I think those two, one of the two should be included in one of the higher priorities.
Yes, definitely green spaces lower the heat island effect, so it does make sense that maybe the green spaces and reducing urban heat island might potentially be a combined priority. Anyone else?
I think personally, water conservation, I think, is one of the top priorities, I would say, for me. When we look at this region, the Southwest, Southern California, water is such an important resource, and we're seeing ongoing drought. I think it would be helpful to, of course, understand the efforts done thus far in Glendale and how what kind of progress has been made. Of course, that could be something we could consider with part of this work plan for the next year, but especially want to just put in a vote or a plug for water conservation as being a top priority. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kartunian?
Something that I'm passionate about is energy emission reduction, near and dear to my heart. But I'm torn between that and public outreach. I mean, if the public doesn't know what impact we're having and what impact their decisions are having, all these, point back to them. Ultimately, they live in the city. They decide the direction of council. They decide. So I'm torn between energy emission reduction and public outreach. An informed public outreach, an informed electorate is important.
Just to follow up on that, I think all these are critically important, but again, if you don't have, effective public outreach and people don't know about the programs, I mean, some of these issues will be controlled through regulation, policies the city adopts for its own facilities and things, but I would just say, I think public outreach is really critical. Thank you.
I would also like to add on to that. I think public outreach could be probably number one, because I think through public outreach we'll be able to cover each of the top other priorities in this. Public outreach would probably include informing the public about all the other different, or we could have public outreach in each of the other priorities. So I do think having that and informing the citizens, but also probably the students. We have, Mike and I are trying to be very active with involving the youth. Either maybe we can have like a citizen science project for one of these topics. And I have a lot of ideas about the outreach, so I think that should also be high on our priority list.
Okay, thank you. And how about Commissioner Bartusoff joining us from off-site?
Sure, thank you. This is a naturally frustrating exercise because all of these are priorities and they all have a heavy weight of importance in their own respect. I think for me, as a couple of fellow commissioners have mentioned, energy emissions reduction is a top priority for me, which is kind of addressing greenhouse gas emissions. And I also want to elevate mobility. The numbers vary between 30 and 50% of all of our GHGs come from transportation. So I do want to I hope that the city can kind of focus on that as something we can focus on to reduce GHGs within the city. So those are my top two, and obviously all of them are important.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, just one other comment. I don't know if everyone saw the article in the LA Times today about efforts to save water remain crucial, forecasting potential shortages, So just, I think, another reason to look at water conservation, but also get that message out so people understand how critical it is. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you. These are all great comments. I agree about public outreach. That was the one I kind of gravitated more, having a background in mass communications. I just think that everything's a communication problem that can be solved by improving communication. So that one's near and dear to my heart. I like the idea of Commissioner Kartunian helping us with the energy conservation, given his background with SoCal Edison, and I know that Commissioner Pinkerton has her areas of expertise for solid waste management and so on, which somehow didn't make the list, but oh yeah, there it is, waste reduction. Okay, it is on there, so that's one as well. But then you have vast experience in other areas as well. So, does anyone have any additional comments they'd like to make? Are we all ready to vote yet?
Commissioner Chairperson Werner and Commissioners, to Commissioner Bartros's point, once we get the priorities, we get the list, and we look at the projects, we'll obviously be able to fold in, like when it comes to emissions reductions, we'd fold in like mobility and transportation emissions into that. So, and there's going to be plenty of opportunity to look at the detail once we get the outline of this plan, but this is just right now is to get that outline for us to move forward. So we know they're all important, and we will endeavor to address them in some fashion.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add, like, to that point, I think that's why like public outreach, for example, I didn't list as one of the top ones, because I feel like no matter which topic we're addressing, to me, public outreach would be embedded in that piece. So I just kind of folded that into other priorities, and I prioritized with that in mind.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. And going on for the next one, we will give you all a minute to think about your priorities and how you want to list them. So if you want to write down what your 1 through 7 is, we'll give you a minute to do so. Afterwards, we will then go around the dais and ask everyone to list their 1 through 7, 1 being the highest and 7 being the lowest. And Nora here will input it so we can rank it.
Those of us that feel like the pen and paper, we're dating ourselves.
I know. I know. If I don't write it down, it doesn't sink in.
If someone turns on public access, they're going to think we're meditating.
So now we will go around the dais and ask each commissioner to give us their rankings from 1 through 7. So if you would say like 1, water conservation, 2, mobility, 3, energy emissions, and so on. So first up is Commissioner Bazemore.
Okay. Starting at number 1, public outreach. And number 2, energy emissions reduction. Number 3, water conservation. 4, mobility. 5, green spaces. 6, urban heat island. And number 7, waste reduction.
Thank you. Next, Commissioner Bartrosu, will you please tell us your rankings from 1 through 7?
Sure. So I had 1 is energy emissions reduction, 2 is mobility, 3 is green spaces, 4 is water conservation, 5 is urban heat island, 6 is waste reduction, and 7 is public outreach.
Thank you. Next up, Commissioner Cartoonian, please tell us your rankings.
I have 1 public outreach, 2 energy emission reduction, 3 mobility, 4 water conservation, 5 waste reduction, 6 green spaces, and 7 urban heat island.
Thank you. Next up is Vice Chair Pinkerton. Please tell us your rankings.
Sure. Public outreach number 1, energy emissions reductions 2, water conservation 3, waste reduction 4, green spaces 5, urban heat island 6, and mobility number 7.
Thank you. Chair Werner, please tell us your rankings.
Okay, I had number 1 as public outreach, number 2 is urban heat island, number 3 is water conservation, number 4 is green spaces, 5 as energy emissions reduction, 6 is waste reduction, and 7 mobility.
Thank you. Ex officio Kudo, you can tell us your rankings of the priorities. However, at the end, when the commission votes on the work plan, you won't be able to participate in that, but you can provide your rankings as part of discussion for the work plan.
Thank you. So for number 1, I have public outreach. 2, I have energy emissions reduction. 3, green spaces. 4, water conservation. 5, waste reduction. 6, urban heat island. And 7, mobility.
Hold on one moment. Can you please repeat your rankings?
So number 1, I have public outreach. 2, energy emissions reduction. 3, green spaces. 4, water conservation. 5, waste reduction. 6, urban heat island. And 7, mobility.
Thank you. We'll now calculate the results.
More music.
Yeah.
Chair, we expect that you remember all of our rankings.
We have all that data.
We play the Jeopardy music in the background.
The results are in. So, based on your rankings, number 1 was chosen was public outreach. Number 2, energy emissions reduction. Number 3, water conservation. Number 4, green spaces. Number 5, mobility. Number 6, urban heat island. And number 7, waste reductions. As we are suggesting that you go with your top 5 priorities, the results of this would mean the top 5 priorities and the priorities being included in the work plan would be public outreach, energy emissions reduction, water conservation, green spaces, and mobility. If you would like to change the top 5, you have 3 minutes to discuss if you want to change the order of your top 5.
Can we? Oh, sorry.
No. I would say that's interesting that waste reduction is the last one for me. I think I actually did list it as my last vote, so that's being a little, I don't know. I just would think that that might be a little higher and would make it into our work plan. So I don't know if I'm necessarily advocating that we move it in, because I think the top 5 we've chosen are really important, but it just feels strange to me that we wouldn't include something like waste reduction.
So, Commissioner Beesnell, and that's a really good point. And thinking about it, as we go into the next task where we be looking at the definitions, at that point, the commissioners may decide that something like public outreach is something that should be done in general. It's like this is without it being in this list. This is something that the commission should be doing. And as Commissioner Bartoszów mentioned, within each of the different categories, there would be a public outreach component. So then one of the more actionable items listed here would then come up. So that could be a possibility for the commission to discuss.
One comment, I'm sorry, maybe 4 of these could be paired up. Green spaces with urban heat island, and then mobility with energy emissions reduction, because I assume emissions includes transportation, not just buildings, so.
Yeah, that had come up earlier too. It's hard to look at any of them in isolation because they're all sort of parts of the same puzzle. I mean, as the urban heat island goes down, so do emissions because people aren't running their air conditioners to stay cool and things like that, so.
But like my colleague mentioned earlier, green spaces and urban heat island can definitely be combined. One has a direct effect on the other. We can do both at the same time.
I feel that instead of having green spaces at 4 and then making the urban heat island number 4 instead, I think the green spaces would be one aspect of fighting the urban heat island effect. So if we were to keep like the names, I would rather have the urban heat island be the one instead of green spaces, because I do believe green spaces are within that category.
Well, I also look at green spaces as, access to nature, which is something that the city is sorely lacking in. So although having more green space would help the heat island effect, but I think it's a big social equity issue here in the city where the people of the lowest economic levels have the least access to green space here in this city. So to me, that's why I ranked it as high as I did, is because of that piece of it, which really has little to do with the heat island effect. So they're related, just like all these are intertwined, but I don't really consider them the same thing.
And the next exercise, you're going to be able to define that, what to you means green spaces and everything. So
your time is up for discussion. Does the commission want to change any of the top 5?
Well, I might, just to go back a little, teeing off what David said, I mean, public outreach will be part of any one of these topics. Maybe what our goals should be with public outreach is to develop what are our standard practices for outreach to the public, for outreach to the business sector, for outreach. So maybe what we need to do is develop a minimum list of standards. Is it direct mail? Is it email? What percentage of residents' emails do we have? There are newsletters, there are bill inserts. I don't know what the readership is on those, but one thing that also struck me could be doing outreach to houses of worship here. I mean, and there are a lot of community civic clubs that we should probably do outreach to, so that could be one way to look at public outreach.
So from the commission, it sounds like you want to go forward with these top 5.
I'm okay with the current list. I feel like part of this exercise is to narrow down our priorities rather than try to figure out how to encompass all of it. So I'm thinking of this being okay just in the context of the city having done so much recently with urban heat island issues, the city's aggressively planting more trees in South LA. There's various state laws, and we just passed the plastics ordinance, or working on a plastics ordinance now to reduce waste. So those were low on my list personally because I know that we're already doing a lot in those buckets. So anyway, long story short, I'm okay with moving forward with the top 5.
Okay, great.
I thought we were, I could be wrong, the 4 and 7, I thought we were gonna combine it and put it under the umbrella of Urban Heat Island? And green spaces as one aspect of the Urban Heat Island, that, am I not correct?
4 and 6, you mean?
4 and 6, yes. So my understanding is that green spaces would be one aspect of how we want to tackle Urban Heat Island.
If anything, I would say that it would be the other way around, that green spaces would help address Urban Heat Island, but to me, green spaces is far more of a priority, particularly in our underserved neighborhoods.
So can we put green spaces / Urban Heat Island? Any objection?
Works for me.
Can we get 2 pie slices out of it?
Yeah, because, I mean, reducing urban heat island would be an outcome of
They are
that. And
related.
yeah. And also, if we looked at public outreach as more of a, tool than a goal in and of itself, then 6 kind of becomes part of the top 5. So there's that as well. Okay, so it looks like our time is up.
Time is up. These are your 5 priorities going forward for the work plan. Next up is we will define the priority. So we will show you a definition of each priority, and then you will have a minute to read each definition. These are definitions that staff put together based on what the city has done and based on other work plans and also organizations. You will have a minute to read, think about it, and then we'll have 5 minutes to discuss and edit each priority definition. We'll give us 1 or 2 minutes as we set up the next set of slides.
It takes me weeks at the city. You get in 5 minutes.
It's,
Again, this is just an outline. It's just starting point as
We get things adopted much more quickly if we have a schedule.
Yeah, right.
if you allowed us to have a few weeks.
Yeah, feel free to use this.
Wow.
Okay.
Wouldn't leave all the arguments over 1 or 2 words.
Should it be or and? Where do we
Yes.
put the comma?
Or a semicolon.
Semicolon.
Yeah, I think the reason waste reduction was kind of lowered is that, we've moved the needle on that quite a bit with
Yeah.
some of the plastic
Yeah.
reduction recently, so it
Yeah.
feels like we're already accomplishing things.
But if you give me some.
And again, commissioners,
Change everything else.
throughout the year, if you do want to change the plan later in the year, it's not static. It's just giving us like direction where we want to be. Just
Right, yeah, not carved in stone, right? Yeah, okay.
I'm glad water conservation made it in the top 5.
Yeah.
Chairperson Werner will be able to tell you about her trip out to the Hoover Dam and about all the water, the great things that was learnt and everything.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of participating in a Metropolitan Water District tour invited by Mayor Kasakian, and it was very eye-opening, just visiting Hoover Dam, Parker Dam, other reservoirs and so on, and just seeing like how much lower they are than usual, and how tenuous some of our water sources are, in terms of other populations competing for the same water sources and so on. So
Stop at Salton Sea?
yes, we stopped at Salton Sea for lunch, and that was eye-opening as well. It was very informative.
Nostril opening too.
Yeah.
Right, so I think we're going to go on to activity 2 now.
The first up is definition was regarding public outreach, and the definition was to develop and participate in initiatives, events, and activities that inform, educate, and engage community members on relevant city and sustainability items and issues. What you have now is you have a minute to reflect upon the definition and
Okay, thank you. I know public outreach is one of the main purposes of the commission as well, so just to help bring awareness to, the population of the wonderful programs that the city is already doing, and then also to just try to encourage conservation mindfulness and water conservation as well.
One edit that I would recommend, events and activities are interrelated. Instead of events and activities, I would say events and lectures, bringing in subject matter experts, thought leaders. I know the library had a whole series on history and whatnot.
Is this sustainability capitalized because that's the commission, or are we just saying sustainability at large? Because if so, I don't know if that needs to be capitalized.
It's just sustainability at large.
Just one comment. I usually do this for my day job. I always include city employees because I think it's important to educate employees. A lot of them may not have a grounding in these issues.
Yeah, since a lot of employees don't actually live in Glendale, that would be, and yet they can have an impact on our resources. And I would like the idea if we said something like to your point, to develop and participate in initiatives, educational events and activities.
Sure.
That inform,
'Cause
educate,
otherwise,
engage, yeah.
events and activities are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
So instead of lectures, we want to use educational events. Not capital.
Just one thing you need to change. Change educator to educate on the second line.
And staff doesn't need to be capitalized. What? Grammar teacher.
No. Yeah?
Yep.
Items and issues. Topics, maybe?
Yeah, I think items is a little vague, yeah, sustainability.
Yeah, so yeah,
Or
topics
goals,
and
maybe.
issues. What do we think? Or goals, I guess,
Yeah.
goals and
Yeah,
issues?
sustainability.
A bunch of-
Sustainability goals and issues.
Okay. That sounds good.
Commissioner Bartosuf, can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear. I'm following along.
Okay.
This looks good to me.
Okay, did you have any comments on the edited definition of the public outreach?
No, I think what you guys landed on sounds good to me.
Thank you.
if there are no more changes, we can move on to the next item.
Move on to the next slide.
Okay, next one is
Efficient.
energy emissions reduction. Support the reduction of greenhouse gases from energy production and consumption in the city.
Do we want to consider incorporating transportation into that, or do we want to leave this just strictly as generation and consumption? I'm sorry, I probably
You
stepped
can
over
say,
you.
to be inclusive, you can say, and promote transportation and building electrification.
I mean, we have mobility on its own, don't we?
Yes.
Yeah. I would keep it separate.
But isn't mobility really more public transportation? I mean,
Biking, public transportation.
Yeah, I mean, emissions reductions comes from that, but I'm just.
Vehicle or emissions, I think we're looking here more at,
But if you say
of,
the generic term as transportation and promote transportation electrification, you're trying to cover it all. Buses can be electrified, you know.
Yes.
Greenhouse is also one word too. You can edit that.
Correct.
So does anyone have any additional
So,
input
so
on this one?
what was the suggestion again?
And promote transportation and building electrification, because it's part of emission reduction. You know, whether it's your stovetop or whether it's the hot water heater, those are all GHG emitters or other pollutants. Support the reduction of greenhouse gas energy production.
We include like improving air quality, atmospheric like emissions, and like the quality of like atmospheric gases.
Well, that's a result of this, but we don't have air quality as a separate thing, but. Okay.
Would you like it in the definition?
Yeah, I think air quality should be mentioned in there, since that's certainly the whole reason we would be reducing emissions is to improve air quality.
I think you would need to have energy production and energy consumption as two separate, because right now it reads as energy production, consumption, and transportation, and where I don't think we're focusing specifically on, energy transportation, electrification, and improvement.
Same thing with transportation. We can put transportation / building electrification, or is it transportation, the comma, it's almost like, what are we doing with transportation?
I know,
Right.
I feel like transportation wants to be in the mobility column, so I guess it is different.
That's a good point, I guess.
Well, there's one benefit to being a little loose in that then
Yeah.
you can interpret this one, your definition.
Okay, if we want to take out transportation here and include it in mobility,
Yeah, I see this as more like, Energy Star appliances, reducing natural gas, those kinds of things.
from energy production and consumption, and promote building electrification.
Yeah, and promote, because I would say we're not, sorry,
Yeah.
no, I don't know if we're necessarily working to reduce reduction of greenhouse gases from building electrification,
Yeah.
the process of building electrification.
Building electrification.
So a possibility may be support the reduction of greenhouse gases from stationary and mobile emissions. And those are your two big categories. And they can do projects cascading off those categories. Just
That the AQMD's definition, 'cause that's a source of contention. Stationary and mobile
I think you
emissions.
could say to improve the air quality in the city, because that's like the why.
Support the reduction
So-
of greenhouse gas from stationary
Or in mobile emissions to improve air quality in the city.
and mobile emissions.
And I think emissions should be sources, maybe, from stationary mobile sources. But delete emission, what do you think?
Sounds right.
Yeah. AQMD actually has a committee on that, MSRC, mobile source reduction.
Yeah, and you don't need the word "and" in there, since it's, support the reduction of greenhouse gases from stationary and mobile emission sources to improve the air quality in the city, but, yeah.
Support the reduction from stationary and mobile emission sources to improve the air quality.
Right, however, that
Or
makes it
if we
seem.
start it, improve the air quality in the city by supporting the reduction of greenhouse gases. And like if we
Right.
put the
So flip it.
purpose of it, and at the beginning, I think it reads better.
However, I would add that this speaks to a larger goal of combating climate change. So I think focusing this specifically on local air quality through this wording might be a little limiting.
Reduction of greenhouse gases.
How about improve the air quality in the city, combat climate change, through.
I think climate change is
Your time
more
is
of an
up.
umbrella term. It should come
Right.
first, probably.
To improve.
Combat climate change.
Would you like 1 more minute?
Yes.
You have 1 more minute.
This is the more difficult one.
Yeah, so it's energy emissions, because there's volatile organic compounds from materials and so on, but we don't have that in there at all, but let's see.
We put combat climate change first, combat climate change, and improve air quality in the city. Climate change, umbrella term.
I see the air quality as more of a human health thing, to promote human health by improving air quality in the city, but
The combat climate change and improve
I think it works.
This works,
Yeah.
works for me, I would say.
Having a time limit.
I know we've gone over on this one, so, okay.
Okay,
Commissioner
Okay.
Bartosif, do you have any comments?
No, this is good.
Okay.
thank
Right.
you. We'll be moving on to the next one.
Little candy prize.
You do.
I think that's very impressive work.
You have 1 minute for water conservation, further policy strategies and activities that preserve and reduce water resources.
Reduce water consumption and help preserve resources, maybe.
They're already being reduced, whether we like it or not.
That preserve resources and reduce
Consumption.
consumption or waste, I guess, or
Yeah,
Yeah,
further
consumption, I
policies,
suppose.
strategies, and activities
Some
that
people waste while they consume.
reduce water consumption, right? For the policies.
Should we also add about raising water conservation awareness to this definition?
Doesn't that fall under outreach or
Yeah.
priority number one?
So, it's one of the policies would be to get the word out about water waste, I think.
I think we can say that about
Implied.
all of our priorities. Get the word out, inform, educate.
So instead of further policies, strategies, and activities, would we also be able to add like further policies, like public awareness on, or,
We can say an awareness that preserve policies, strategies, and awareness that preserve water resources.
Or maybe policies, strategies, and educational activities, or outreach activities, something like that.
I think the previous definition, did it start with to promote? So I don't know if that's a similar structure we want to use for all of these. I don't know if it was the last, I guess I'm not suggesting it for this necessarily, but that would encompass the,
Yeah, I like that.
yeah,
That
that
better.
would encompass the public awareness necessarily.
And for preserve water, that makes it sound like a wildlife preserve. I think we mean conserve there would be more
Yeah,
specific.
Conserve water resources and reduce.
Policies. Okay, going once, going twice. We're making up for the one where we ran over by finishing this one early.
Next is green spaces. Support development expansion of accessible spaces in the city that are partly or completely covered with vegetation.
Can you bring in the definition for urban heat island as well? We need to somehow combine the two. Sorry. Okay. Accessible green spaces, and we don't need the, in the
partly or
that
completely.
are partly
yeah.
completely covered with vegetation. Development expansion of accessible green spaces.
Green, yeah.
And further,
That further,
yeah.
I would recommend not including the thing that you're defining in your definition.
yes. For development expansion of accessible spaces in the city.
Decrease the heat risk.
Accessible green spaces in the city. Oh, yeah, we talked about that.
Import,
In the city that. Can we say instead of permeable spaces? Basically, those that are not covered with,
Well, permeable can mean permeable paving
Concrete,
and,
there's, yeah, concrete pavement. Yeah.
or aggregate, or, there's, things that absorb heat.
Natural surfaces?
natural surfaces instead of this long definition of vegetation.
Support development and expansion of natural spaces.
Expansion of natural spaces in the city.
I would say vegetated spaces, then, I don't know.
Sure.
Natural could be
Sure, yeah.
rock.
Mm-hmm.
Vegetated. Well, and provide recreational opportunities, right?
So in the city to reduce, to provide additional
Or to
recreational
help-
opportunities?
Or to
comma?
help the population connect with nature, to support development and expansion of vegetation, to reduce city temperatures and connect with nature, something like that.
We could probably condense the connect with nature to like provide ecological services. So then that would include like the cultural and also the recreational, as well as like anything that deals with the water. And that would be more of an umbrella term.
Yeah, I think the city calls it recreational and open space. I think that's the recreation element of the city plan. Calls it recreational open space.
The suggestion you gave, though, is that a technical term? Ecological services?
I believe so.
Okay,
Or
I guess-
ecosystems.
Never heard of that.
Ecological. Supports development and expansion of.
So yeah, there are regulating, supporting, cultural, and provisioning, and these are all different services that these are called ecosystem services. Sorry,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay, support development of ecological spaces. I don't think a lot of people are going to know what that means.
Yeah.
I mean, vegetated is like, it has,
I agree with
stuff
the
growing on it.
vegetated spaces, not ecological spaces.
Yeah, it's easier for a layman to understand.
Vegetated spaces and
Vegetated spaces and services. What's a vegetated service?
surface. Oh, I think that was from ecological services. I think that
Oh, okay.
got in there. Okay,
It's
there we
like,
go.
what's a vegetated-
Yeah.
Eat more broccoli.
You might be inventing something new here, but maybe you're onto something. Okay, support the development and expansion of vegetated spaces in the city.
I also have a question about the urban heat island. When we define that, we only say the built environment, but I also feel that it's important to include like the actions, like using the cooler, and how that also contributes to the urban heat, like urban temperatures due to the built environment and like habits maybe, to also emphasize the human aspect of it.
Can you give me an example? I'm not sure I understand. Because like you look for more reflective surfaces or things that won't absorb solar as much.
Yes, so it says to reduce urban temperatures due to the built environment, but I also thought it was important to include that humans also contribute to the rising urban temperatures in these urban areas with their like transportation or those different activities that also contribute.
Yeah, I think promoting connections to nature could be that last part, and promote connections with nature. Let's see.
Time is up.
Okay,
Shall we move to the next item?
Wait.
Does the
the
promote
built-in-
connections with nature include recreation? Is that what?
We'll give you one more minute.
Yeah, we need more time here. We're going to use some of the time from the water one on this one, so.
Should we decide too on the order for the name based on maybe our ranking? Does it need to be reconfigured somehow?
Yeah, because if we're going to mention the built environment and so on, that
Yeah, we need-
doesn't relate to green spaces that
You wanna do
correctly.
another
So
slash?
if
Yeah.
we, urban heat island, reduction or something, yeah. Okay, so, and then it said, so to reduce urban temperatures due to the built environment and habits, that's kind of weird. And habits, I would say, and promote connections to
Human
neighbor.
Is it usage
Human
patterns?
behavior, human
Oh,
habit,
beha- okay.
human-
Yeah, expanding vegetated spaces due to the built, to reduce urban temperatures from,
I might also suggest if we're doing green spaces first in the name, we should probably have that last portion, connections with nature, maybe come first,
yeah,
since that's the
support the
main point of-
development and expansion of vegetation,
and
vegetated
then-
spaces to support connections to nature, yeah, and to reduce urban temperatures due
Time
to,
is up.
What's a human behavior?
I know that,
When we said reflective
yeah.
I
space,
We're looking
coatings
good.
like the
Looking
streets,
good, isn't it?
we got a briefing on that.
Yeah, I think it's due to the built environment, in that like the buildings, like the concrete and like the things add to the increasing heat risk, but also human behaviors and using like the air conditioner that also exacerbates the temperatures in the city, which is where I was kind of seeing that from, but it might not be necessary in this case.
Yeah, I don't think we need it there. And we have that in the energy use
Yeah.
piece as well, which is, so it's kind of implied there, but,
I think if it's strictly green spaces and urban heat reduction, we don't need the and human behavior.
yeah. Yeah, so I think we're good. We'll just get rid of the last
And
three
we're
words
addressing the
there.
main cause, which
Yeah.
is the built environment.
Yeah, support the development and expansion of vegetation.
Okay. Are we okay with this?
Yes.
Can we ask?
Commissioner
We're gonna get a thumbs
Bartrosu is giving us the thumbs
We
up.
got a
Okay.
thumbs up, yeah.
We can continue to the next item, which is mobility. Mobility, as defined here, supports developments in the city's transportation and pedestrian plans to improve movement around the city using zero to low emission methods.
Can we add accessibility after movement?
So you mean like increased accessibility to buses or, okay.
Then do we need movement there to improve?
Maybe and low emission methods, 0 to low emission sounds, so we're providing a range there, I suppose.
Or could we say promote transportation pedestrian mobility strategies that improve accessible movement?
Could you define what is meant by accessible movement, please?
I didn't think it would be accessible movement. I thought, and improving accessibility to these types of
Improving access to public
Yes.
transportation, okay.
Access and, well, so.
Yeah, accessibility
maybe-
makes me think, people with disabilities, so, okay. Improve access, yeah.
Would we
Which is
not say,
important. We want it to be accessible to those populations too, so.
Promote transportation.
Well, how about improve accessibility to public transportation and enhance movement
I think
through?
she meant earlier to improve. Did you mean it at the end?
Yeah, to improve movement around the city using zero emission methods. And
How about we say to improve accessibility and movement around the city?
Or increase access to public transportation.
That's more.
To
I think that's what we're trying to
increase
say.
access.
Yeah.
Strategies that increase access, right?
Thinking about like increasing options for people to get around, and I want to make sure we include the word safe somewhere here. We want people to be able to walk and bike safely.
How about we put increase access, increase safe access, that increase safe access earlier in the sentence. Promote transportation and pedestrian strategies that increase safe access and improve movement around the city using zero and low emission methods, period. Let's read this one more time. Promote transportation and pedestrian strategies that increase.
What about substituting options for methods? Probably not critical, but
Or we could move safe to later to say, promote transportation and pedestrian strategies that increase access and improve movement safely around the city. Movement safely around the city using zero and low emission methods.
Access is twice repeated. The word access.
it's not elegant, but it could work.
Yeah, it's sort of how I'm feeling, yeah.
Using, let's see, increase access.
And the commission will have the opportunity to, because we'll send all this back out to the commission, so you have the opportunity to edit in a bit more time, and if you want to make changes, that will be.
Instead of movement safely, can we say safe movement? Would that improve it? Promote transportation and pedestrian strategies that increase access to improve, no. Yeah? Is safe
Yeah.
movement better than movement safely?
Or increase access to safe and convenient
reliable.
movement or something. Okay, right. We're beating,
We extended our,
yeah,
gone
okay.
past our 5 minutes.
Okay.
Sufficient?
30
Yeah,
seconds.
that's right.
Oh, we can change one more word.
We have
wait.
to think about moving on to the next one, so.
Okay, moving on.
I can live with this.
That increase access to safe, like what, access and like, there needs to be something after access, increase access to public transportation or to increase access to safe
You have 1 more minute.
transportation.
Safe, reliable, and clean movement around the city.
There you go. I like that, okay. Increase access to safe, reliable, and clean transportation.
And I don't like the word movement in that context. works, but.
Verbal diarrhea actually.
We could say
Reliable,
mobility,
clean-
mobility.
We're not going
What's
to
another-
use the
what's another-
title and
What's another
definition.
synonym for transportation in lieu of movement?
Circulation?
I mean,
Well, it could be simply transportation.
What, Alec?
Just
Yeah.
transportation.
Transportation, okay.
More
we
transportation.
can like
Commissioner Batrisuf.
shift the words. Yeah, sorry, we can shift the words to say promotes access to safe, reliable, and clean transportation.
How about transit?
Wait a second.
Yeah, or does that include bikes?
Or we could say promote strategies that increase access to safe, reliable, and
Give 1 minute.
clean transportation around the city,
Yeah,
like that. Did you catch that? I just said something brilliant here, so, okay. So,
Robbie.
so to promote strategies that increase access to safe, reliable, and clean transportation around the city.
That promote,
Yes.
promote strategies that, no,
What?
it can't be that.
Wait,
promote.
no, that, yeah, promote strategies that increase access to safe, reliable, and clean movement around the city. Promote strategies that increase, yeah, we still need that in there. Oh, okay, that increase access, safe and clean.
What about access to safe and reliable?
Transportation instead of movement.
Going once.
We can live with, I
You're
think
going
we
to change
can live with
movement
it.
to transportation.
Let's do that. Let's change movement to transportation, then we'll move on. But we'll give the commissioners the opportunity to.
Thank you for moving us along, because otherwise we'll be here for a while.
So next up, you will move on to activity 3, which is choosing the projects. You will be able to select your top 2 projects per priority, and we'll include the top 2 projects for each priority in your work plan. If you see a star next to the project, that denotes a project that is also from the city council's work plan as part of your, which you would have seen in the agenda packet. So what you have is 5 minutes to discuss the projects listed for each priority, and you can add projects to the list if you feel that there's a project that should be on the list. Then we will go around the dais, and each commissioner will be able to select their top 2, and then at the end we will calculate what are the top 2 projects. And keep in mind, all these projects come from the survey we did with the commission where you gave your ideas and project suggestions.
So we're to blame.
Okay.
So give us a minute, we have to set up the projects real quick. Public outreach is your first priority, and public outreach projects from your survey included cleanup events, tree plantings, citizen science projects, student sustainability ambassadors, Earth Day, nonprofits attending commission meetings, and donation drive. You now have 5 minutes to discuss and add any other projects here that you'd like to vote upon.
Can we combine some of those?
Well, like Earth Day tends to have a lot of, different pieces to it too. But
Or you clean up, and while you're cleaning
Tree
up, you pick up
plantings,
the whole
maybe.
and
Oh,
And I haven't given up on my e-waste collection because I still think that's a really big deal right now. And
I think,
people are tossing their electronics in the
I
trash,
know,
I'm sure of it,
I
so.
think having our contractors, the 4 that we contract with, they can, just like they gave out the,
Have an additional bucket or bin for,
I think for the e-waste, we're one of the projects for the student projects is to make like a network of environmental clubs throughout the school districts, and I think having like everyone at each of the schools like set up one of the e-waste drop-off events is something that could be really helpful because students have to go to school anyways. Might as well send your kid with some trash that you need to throw away. So that could be something we work on as a ex officio project as well.
Great.
Does that fall under our waste reduction category, though, which we decided we weren't going to include? Not that I think it's not important. I do
it's
think it's important.
hazardous though, so it's a little different because it's managed differently.
Okay, yep. Fair enough.
And we do have a household hazardous waste collection program through the fire department. So, and setting up e-waste collection drives there's an expense to that. You have to get the right companies in, and you have to make sure that the collectors meet standards of how they're going to manage that e-waste, so it doesn't get sent to third world countries and stuff like that. So there's a number of issues surrounding that have to be thought through as you do a collection drive. Just a thought. And another thought maybe is actually removing Earth Day from this project, since that's almost administrative action that's done through the Commission, through the Office of Sustainability, and encompass all these different activities as part of Earth Day, but just a thought.
Can I suggest to combine the first two? And question for the staff, what's an example of citizen science project?
Why don't we turn to our student?
So, citizen science projects crowdsource data for, it can be any topic. I made one myself. It's called Poo Patrol, and it's about dog poop. And dog poop is left undisposed, can, through runoff, enter our waterways, and it can cause eutrophication and other safety hazards. So what the project is doing is all these students have a phone, and they are able to open their survey on their phone whenever they're out on a walk or outside anywhere, and they see some undisposed pet waste, and then they're able to scan it and record the location, and that is sent to ArcGIS, a geographic information system software, where I can interpolate the data and find make a heat map of areas that are problem areas, and then use that data to advocate for the implementation of a pet waste station. And so I think citizen science projects are a really unique way to involve the community in learning about whatever topic we decide, and then also having them involved in the process as well.
okay.
Would tree planting qualify, in your opinion, as a citizen, science project? I mean, with coordinating with the city, of course, as far as acceptable trees, but monitoring the trees, handling the watering if there's not irrigation on site.
I think that can be something that we make into a citizen science project format. I know there's one for invasive species where you log all the invasive species in your backyard or on a hike trail. So maybe just also logging the type of tree you have or in your neighborhood, and then how often you're upkeeping it could also be something very helpful.
Okay.
I'm not feeling the cleanup and tree planting being one thing, because I think it's two different things.
Two
But
separate? Okay.
yeah, I just think it's different. Different people would be involved in that, I think.
I will just throw out to lobby for donation drives. In LA, we started opening these up to the public probably 4 years ago, and we use our sanitation yards. Time's up. Okay.
Time is up.
Oh, okay.
Have one more minute.
Okay. That has generated a lot of media coverage for us, and we get pretty good public participation, especially when we do things like blanket drives. And most of what we're doing is benefiting the homeless community in some regard. So we've done blankets, non-perishable food, clothing. It's escaping me what the other ones are, but we have each donation drive is 2 months in duration.
So might we be able to combine the last two, for instance? I know they might have different requirements for who needs to be there, but that could be like a joint
So
effort.
one stop.
Yeah, it's all
drop-off or-
reducing
Yeah.
waste and.
I know there are also, I can't recall if it was mentioned at this commission
Something takes some.
or other commissions, but there have been, and it may have been made into this list or not, but there, I think someone mentioned, like fix-it clinics.
Oh, the repair,
Oh,
yes,
okay.
yeah.
Eric mentioned that, yeah,
Yeah.
and like that could be mentioned, or in here somehow, I don't know.
Or that maybe citizen science for that, I don't know, yeah.
Time is up.
Question, can I ask a question? What is the student sustainability ambassadors? Like, what would that include?
That is for the commission to decide.
Oh, okay.
I just thought this would be something that kind of intersects with our student project, the ex officio project, with making that like network of clubs at all these schools and having them serve as the student sustainability ambassadors at their schools. So
And do we need a line item for Earth Day? I mean,
I think not.
yeah,
You wish to
because the
believe it?
cleanup event or the tree planting could be Earth Day activities.
Right.
Okay, so now we will vote. We will go around the dais and call you out your name, and then you will tell us which two projects you would like to vote upon, and we'll put a tick in that section. And at the end, we will tally up all the votes, and whichever two projects get the most votes will be part of the work plan. Okay. First up, Commissioner Bazemore.
This is tough. I don't think I have a top, let's see. So right now, my top two would be I suppose cleanup events, and then
Sorry, what was your first choice?
the
Cleanup event.
the cleanup events, let's say that. And then the donations and e-waste collection.
Thank you. Commissioner Bartrosuf?
Yeah, so this is public outreach, right? So we want to maximize public outreach. So I'll go with tree planting events. And I really like the idea of engaging students. So I'll go with student sustainability ambassadors.
Thank you. Commissioner Cartoonian?
I'm gonna go with cleanup events and fix-it clinic.
Thank you. Commissioner Pinkerton?
The student sustainability ambassadors and the donation and e-waste.
Thank you. Commissioner, Chair Werner?
The donation e-waste and tree planting.
And ex officio Kudo?
the student sustainability ambassadors and the tree planting.
We're nonprofits, no one else. It's not directly in our lane, that's why I think.
Although we could engage with them with the students maybe, you know,
Yeah,
just throw
yeah.
it.
So after your top three with 3 votes, and you can include 3 projects for this item, would be tree planting events, and then student sustainability ambassadors, and then donation and e-collection drive. Okay.
Do we have time, since we don't know exactly what the Student Sustainability Ambassadors project
You can
is?
decide that later when we decide, when you choose your lead for each priority or leads, they can decide.
Okay, thank you.
The cleanup.
So remember, this is an outline, and then you can decide how each item is executed later on down the line. It doesn't have to be defined now.
Okay.
So next one is energy emissions and reduction projects. You have 5 minutes to discuss projects that were suggested were building electrification of new developments, which aligns with the city council priority, clean renewable energy investments and purchases, clean/renewable energy development, and reduce carbon emissions of current buildings. And I believe these two are also aligned with city council work plan.
Well, the REACH code was adopted, was it not? So that really would address number one, and when developments means any type of new construction, right? Okay.
I mean, if the REACH code's adopted,
Yeah.
should we just
Oh,
I
eliminate?
take it
recommend
out?
removing
Yeah,
that
the
top
first
one.
line,
Yep.
yeah.
I mean, what else can we do there?
Right.
Yeah.
The council is still, it's somewhat still up in the air, Shoal Canyon, Grayson, right? As far as, I mean, we don't have a final decision yet on the number of gas generators and the biomass generation at Shoal. So I don't know that we can, if there's anything we can do with the third item.
I'd like to see something along the lines of energy reduction incentives, you know, incentivizing
Doesn't the Shoal
people to
Canyon
do
fall
that.
under the other categories already? Why?
It is, yeah, it is classified as renewable energy.
I don't know if we need.
I might suggest for the first one that we crossed out the, replacing that with existing developments. I think that's something that's in the pipeline potentially for future REACH codes.
Yeah. Instead of existing buildings, you should say legacy buildings. Developments.
That's the same as the item above it, right? Reduce
I was-
emissions of
Oh,
current
I'm
buildings.
sorry, thank you, yeah, that, well,
okay.
that is on there already, yeah.
Okay. Energy consumption incentives, like we have the demand response program where we still have a lot of thermostat devices that aren't supported yet, and I'd like to see that
One is investment.
expanded.
That'd be, yeah, investments.
What was that project again?
That was the savings program, the
Demand response.
yeah, it was the demand response one where you register your thermostat with your smart thermostat with the city, and then they can change the temperature remotely by a few degrees when there's a peak demand load anticipated. And there's still, to this day, a lot of thermostats that aren't part of that program, including mine. So
Isn't the demand response program an energy consumption incentive?
it's like reducing demand, you know, so flattening the curve,
So
you
you
know,
get
basically.
a,
But
with the DR, you get a little bit of discount, you know, in
Yeah,
return
you
for the
do, yeah.
consumption. So the demand response program and the energy consumption incentives,
yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking of when I said
Related.
energy consumption incentives.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I will offer that I think most of these are going to happen at this council GWP level, because I know like virtual power plant, demand response, those things, those policies have been out there, and I think they haven't yet developed
one they're not.
contracts. So of all these, I think the ones where we possibly have input would be the reducing carbon emissions in current buildings.
Yeah.
And maybe that's through outreach, improved student sustainability ambassadors, you know, visiting buildings to make sure they know, have they put LEED light, you know, LEDs in and things like that.
I think I, the one that wrote that one originally, but because, you know, we've got, what was it, 78,000 buildings in the city, and, you know, we can move the needle a lot more by looking at the buildings that are already here versus the ones that, you know, trickle in, you know, every now and then. So, you know, things like having cool roofs and things like that, it's a bigger challenge because the buildings are already, you know, you're stuck with some of it, but just it requires a little more creativity, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's going to be hard for the commission to make any like headway in some of these other things. I think just focusing on that one and then supporting the policies and actions surrounded by what you can do to cut carbon emissions. I think a focus on that, just because this subject is so wide and so
Yeah.
broad,
Yeah.
I think that Commission will be able to like select some projects from that. So we're going to focus on these things. Just
So maybe we just have a number one.
Time is up. Are you ready to vote?
What was the suggestion, David, that you gave for which one?
to focus on reducing carbon emissions of current buildings and just like everything that goes surrounds that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if
But
there
it is your choice. That's just opinion.
Well, yeah,
There
everything
are-
else kind of, falls into that category, really, and so,
There's not much for us to do in 2 and 3.
yeah.
So moving on to voting, we'll go in reverse order. Ex officio Kudo, what are your top 2 projects?
To reduce carbon emissions of current buildings as well as the demand response program.
Thank you. Chair Werner, what are your votes?
Reducing carbon emissions of current buildings, which part of that is, the demand response program would help to achieve that.
Is that your vote?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Pinkerton?
I'm voting the same way.
Commissioner
Reduce carbon emissions
Kartunian?
and demand response.
Commissioner Kartunian?
Yeah, definitely reduce carbon emissions of current buildings. I'll go with demand response, even though I think it should be broader, not just demand response.
Commissioner Bartrosu?
I'll do current buildings and clean renewable energy development,
And
just
Commissioner
to be
Bays?
different.
Commissioner Bazemore?
Reduce carbon emissions of current buildings and the clean renewable energy development.
Okay, your top 2 are reduce carbon emissions of current buildings and the demand response program. Going on to the next projects is for water conservation projects. The projects relating to this item included drought-resistant plant mandate, recycled water usage, and water efficiency. You have 5 minutes to discuss and add any other projects.
I might start by suggesting that the third one be changed to water conservation, but I know that is the title, so I guess I would ask what we mean by efficiency in this sense.
Reduce water
Yeah,
usage.
yeah.
Would that mean
Like a efficient toilet
Air
or
usage
air
reduction.
toilet?
radiators
Okay.
and-
Reduce usage?
Yeah.
Would that be conservation?
Certainly, yeah, reducing usage. Yeah,
I will
that
note
can
that, again, I think the recycled water usage really is going to happen at the GWP and council level again, because that requires pipe installation. That's a major capital project, so.
Instead of the first one, instead of a drought-resistant plant mandate, I have an issue with the last mandate. I think we need to address non-functional grass. The plant mandate is something that, is something that I have an
Yeah,
issue
so
with.
heavy-handed.
Yeah, sorry, can't plant that plant, even though you like it. Government decides what flower you should have in your front yard.
Okay, call it, yeah.
I
Drought-resistant
think,
vegetation strategies.
yeah.
yeah. I
Right.
think the mandate is kind of too restricting, but having like maybe workshops or something that teach gardeners and people who have like a lawn, like effective ways to incorporate like native plants in their yards would be more helpful, because it also shows them ways to make their gardens look like pretty, because I feel like a lot of people have the idea that maybe drought resistant gardens aren't the prettiest, but having some exposure to that might help.
What if for drought-resistant plant strategies, we include drought-resistant plant strategies and non-functional grass, or including non-functional grass?
I mean, can we just keep it basic and say that, like the line can say, revisiting or landscaping ordinance reform or something? So that we're not like deciding in the moment whether or not we want to ban grass.
Right, too specific now.
Yeah, I think so.
One thing too, I always thought this was, I think they do it Australia maybe, mandate gray water systems for non-functional grass, because then you're kind of recharging.
But you can't water lawns with gray water. It has to be below
No, it has to be
grade.
subsurface, right, or just ban or restrict non-functional grass to a certain percentage of the entire lot.
I think that could all be part of the whole drought-resistant plant strategy. I think turf falls under that, and so I don't think it has to be called out separately. But.
Well, here's one. I think maybe what Alex suggested might be really good. A landscaping ordinance could have a number of these items underneath, but we probably need to go back to water conservation also. One thing, we have a pretty high percentage of multifamily housing in Glendale, and I doubt that most of the apartments have their own water meters. So that's one of the things, you can't gauge your usage in real time because you have no way of measuring it. So I don't know if there are any grant programs out there to go in and put water meters in, or maybe even just flow meters if that's possible to, because you have no real incentive, particularly if the utility cost is built into your rent. Which it probably is if you don't have your own meter, so.
That's
would be
a tough nut to
interesting to
crack.
know.
I mean, who pays for it?
Oh, I know, meters, yeah.
Building owners?
But if it reduces water usage, it may be incentives, grants, for buildings that install those.
For the non-functional grass, I'd be okay with the umbrella term that Commissioner Bartrosov suggested, addressing, what was it, Commissioner?
Revisiting the landscaping ordinance.
Yeah.
So.
Commissioner Bartrosi?
I think we're kind of I think we can consolidate all of the landscaping into that revisit landscaping ordinance, just so that we're not diluting our effort here.
Yeah.
The native plants can go under there. Drought-resistant plant strategies can go under there.
Right, the workshops also.
Yep.
One other idea, as far as water conservation, can we, much like trying to reduce emissions for existing building stock, could we survey existing buildings, water efficient shower heads and things like that?
What would you like to add?
A survey for, how widespread are water efficient devices in existing stock, housing stock in Glendale, such as shower heads, aerators on sinks. Yeah.
Isn't that a
I don't know.
a strategy under reduction, reduce water usage?
Yes, you're right. No, it could. Yes.
I think we can, the last one I think we can remove as because it's a strategy under the reduced water usage.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, that's a way of getting there. It would be good to know how many multifamily buildings have separate meters already.
That's one of the things you would do. You would do a survey and find out.
And right now, the city, like if you want to build a single-family home or apartment, whatever, you just have to submit a landscape plan. No one really vets it to see how water efficient it is. So the model water efficient landscape ordinance that the state adopted, we could adopt something that's stricter than that if we want to. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there.
Chairperson Werner, and sorry, Alec, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. One theme I wanted to add is rainwater harvesting. So the city of LA has a LID ordinance. Rainwater runoff is water that is lost that could otherwise be captured. So I'd like to have that be considered.
Thank you. That has been added, and time is up, and you
1 second, sorry. So with water conservation, as you know, there's principles such as the Awani principles, which are overriding principles that address how water conservation, so maybe a project would be for the commission to look at those principles and see if we can begin to incorporate them in our overall water standards, and that would address a lot of these like individual things that you're looking at. I think that's a larger project. Anyway, just an opinion.
would the commission like to add any more projects?
Just for aesthetics, can we get rid of the ones that we crossed out? That way we don't
Okay,
take those.
ready to vote. So we'll start with Commissioner Cartoonian.
I'm going to go with the landscaping ordinances
Okay.
and recycled water usage.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Bartrosu.
I'm going to go with landscaping ordinance and reduce water usage.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Bazemore.
The revisiting landscaping ordinance. And I'll throw in a vote for the water meters in individual apartment units.
Thank you. Okay, ex officio Kudo.
Revisiting landscaping ordinance reforms, and then the reducing water usage.
Okay, and Chair Werner.
The revisiting the landscape ordinance and also recycled water usage.
Okay, and Commissioner Pinkerton.
The landscaping ordinance also, and then reduce water usage.
Thank you. Your top two projects are revisit landscaping ordinances and reduce water usage. All right. Thank you. Going on to the next one, you have green spaces / urban heat island projects, and they include increased tree canopy by 25% over 10 years, which aligns with city council priority. It includes monarch way stations, increase green space and recreation access, expand protection and enforcement of indigenous tree ordinance, and from the urban heat island, priority was solar reflective asphalt coatings. You have 5 minutes to discuss and add any other projects.
I have a question for the last solar reflective asphalt coatings. Can it be expanded to include also, like any solar reflective surface, like green roofs or other like solar reflective surfaces, like in general?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Like cool roofs and so on.
I had another question for the reflective surfaces. I'm sure there's a lot of like planning when we install those, but do we also take into consideration like the like how close the other buildings are to where we're installing it? Because I know in some cases it can actually increase, it can be more detrimental to the area. So like how would that usually, like how do they assess that solar? I think it was like the reflective, like, because it can go back to buildings and then the buildings absorb that and then they use more AC and it's kind of.
Yeah, I don't think the ordinance has a mechanism in there for looking at that, but there are reflective coatings that are not white, they're like gray, solar gray and so on. And I think those would bounce back more, but yeah, that is something that we should be looking at. So if you're overlooking a bright white roof and it's, bouncing back at you, that probably wouldn't be pleasant.
I don't think that's addressed in the states, the Build Green initiative. I don't think that's in there. Which looks at the greenhouse gas intensity of different construction products.
Or like reducing concrete.
Although they don't address concrete, they left the big one out. So, But they, basically, manufacturers have to meet certain standards, like the state's imposing maximum emissions affiliate with different types of products, but concrete is not in it.
Would that fall under the greenhouse gas, reduction in greenhouse gas category or?
Well, if it's an ozone depleting material, it would, but
Probably not, because it's not active consumption, right? It's embedded already by the time you're using it. It's not an active emissions, right? It's embedded, the GHGs are embedded in effect in the product, so probably not, unless you've got really strict building codes that address that.
And I had another question for the first and the third. Are those things that we can combine possibly? I feel like we should be trying to reach that 25% over in 10 years while increasing green spaces. Are those things we can put together?
Such as have the waste stations in the new green spaces or something where it's suitable?
Well, increasing, I feel like the tree canopy would be kind of included in the green space. And then that would help, expanding green spaces and increasing and recreation access can also help get us to that 25% over 10 years.
Well, I want to push back on that a little bit. The tree canopy shouldn't be restricted to just open spaces. That would essentially mean that most of South Glendale won't have tree canopy because we don't have parks. So I do want to make sure that we
yeah, it
expand.
should say urban tree canopy,
Okay,
actually.
Yeah, then I understand where that.
You can actually combine the first one and the expand protection, increase tree canopy by 25%, and expand protection and enforcement of indigenous trees. You can do both under the same umbrella.
I do think, and I think there was a caller who mentioned issues about our existing ordinance at our last meeting or a couple of meetings ago, but I actually saw that and was wondering if we were interested in modifying that to say mature trees as well as indigenous, because there are a lot of mature trees that provide shade that would address urban heat island that are not necessarily indigenous.
Yes.
And probably a good example are those beautiful big trees at the Civic Auditorium parking lot that I would hate to see go away.
Yeah. No, I agree. There's also a lot of what they call it, like adapted species, where they've learned to live in our environment with the water that's available and over time, and they're low water using. So.
Yes, your time has run
Any
out.
objection to combining the increase tree canopy and expanding protection? Making it an all-encompassing tree project?
Yeah, that works. I mean, whatever keeps, trees from being cut
Yeah.
down and replacing ones that have been. There you go. Yeah, so if you could take out indigenous, well, I guess it's the enforcement of the indigenous tree ordinance, but expand protection for mature trees, just in general, mature trees, and then to expand or to, beef up enforcement of the ordinance.
Do you want to combine this with this one, or this is separate still?
My suggestion was to combine the tree one, the 25% goal, and the expand protection of enforcement of indigenous and mature trees under one project. So the two tree one would be.
Yeah, expanding tree protections helps. I mean, I think
I'm trying to find commonality that way.
Yeah,
We don't
no,
go in
it's-
different directions.
mature and indigenous
Even though they're
tree.
not
Yeah, there you
exactly
go.
the same.
There.
Would that also address the urban tree canopies, or is this just for places that already have these indigenous?
Yeah, I should say urban tree canopy, because that is how the city council described it as well, so.
Increase urban
Yeah.
tree canopy by 25%.
Yeah, because like the parks, that's different. And then increasing green space,
You are over time,
recreation access.
unless
Or increase green space and connections to nature. Or access to nature, or something like that, but,
Access to nature is probably better than.
yeah, access to nature, yeah, there you go, thank you.
Can we combine the
Okay.
two solar ones?
So-
Solar reflective surfaces?
Yes, I
Sure,
think that was
let's do
the
that
idea.
and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
Combine the solar ones.
Okay,
This is more fun than I thought
and
it'd
we're
be.
gonna vote.
Thank
So
you.
right now, we'll have Commissioner Pinkerton.
Vote for increased urban tree canopy and then increased green space.
Thank you. We'll go Chair Werner.
Increasing the urban tree canopy and expanding the tree protection first, and also to increase green space and access to nature.
Okay, ex officio Kudo.
The solar reflective surfaces, and then the increased tree canopy percentage and expand protection one.
Thank you. Commissioner Bazemore.
I'll vote for the first two.
Thank you. Commissioner Bartrosov
Same for me.
and Commissioner Cartoonian.
Same.
Okay, your top projects are increase green space and access to nature and increase urban tree canopy by 25% over 10 years and expand mature and indigenous tree protections. All right, next up is mobility projects. The mobility projects submitted included fleet electrification plan, update citywide bicycle transportation plan, both of which align with city council work plan, EV readiness, and reduced vehicle miles traveled. You have 5 minutes to discuss and add any projects before we vote.
Question, if I may, on fleet electrification, since this is already a priority for the city and they're moving forward on it, what is there for us to tackle, other than they need to put out bids and probably compare different technologies, manufacturers? I mean,
Commissioner Cartoon, that's a very good point. So, I guess you could just keep abreast of the plan. I think would be an idea for the commission to make sure that the city is meeting its goals, or maybe the commission weighs in on what those goals are, of like the fleet swap and how quick to. But you're right, this is a plan that's in process. A lot of good grants
yeah.
to implement this plan, and so maybe.
In 2-3 months from now, we can easily request Public Works or Beeline to come in and say, what is your progress? Where are you heading? What's the holdup? I don't think there's a whole lot for us to do other than get a report and make sure council's aware of.
I would agree.
Yeah, yes, I hear you on that as well. For EV readiness, I know we've spoken about that in the past, and it's something I think we need to be focused on, to making sure that new construction is EV ready. And that was part of the REACH code, wasn't it, that was adopted? Okay, so like could have a star after it, but maybe it's for public spaces as well.
That said, there's a lot more that should be done and could be done in the EV readiness space. For example, where do you put EV chargers? Where do you put fast chargers? We need to be strategic about it. Not every parking lot needs to have one.
Yeah, I think it should be EV readiness and access, right? So-
Sure.
Because a lot of people in
And access to charging
multifamily,
infrastructure.
yeah, if you live in a multifamily apartment, that was,
And access to charging
Yeah.
infrastructure.
yeah, I think a lot of residents don't have access to EV infrastructure. And then also I was thinking about the, access to public transportation. It should be low cost and convenient.
May I suggest equitable access?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. Throw out one suggestion.
Go ahead, Alec.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, Commissioner Cartoonian, I know the updating the citywide bicycle transportation plan is in the works. I understand there's going to be a working group going forward that's going to be directly involved in that. I think for that, my mind kind of comes to safe access. I know that's something that Commissioner Bartusov mentioned at the beginning with our definitions. So I'm trying to think what would fall under that specifically for this commission, but I do know maybe promoting access or use of non-personal vehicles, you know, looking at like how we can have people get out of their cars, use their bikes, walk if they can, use public transit. I don't know if this needs to be exactly this item, but that's sort of the idea I have, at least, for adding to this.
Commissioner Bartrosu?
Yeah, I'll just say, kind of on the heels of what Cole was describing, is I'd like to modify number 2 to say that the city dedicate funding to the bike plan, the pedestrian plan, and what is now becoming a Vision Zero plan as well. They're all plans that are already in the works, so I don't know what we would be doing as a commission to advance the planning of those plans. Rather, I feel like, to Cole's point, we would be promoting access and use of non-personal vehicles and transportation by dedicating funding to these various plans. And so my specific item would be that we dedicate funding to implement these plans.
Question for me, since we can't dedicate funding, should we say, because it's ultimately a recommendation to City Council, prioritize funding for these areas, because we can't dedicate the funding.
Yeah, I mean, nothing we're talking about here is being done by us. So
Correct.
this work plan is going to go to the council for their adoption. So I'm going to dig in my heels, and I've brought this up in the past, that even though we're not a commission that talks about budget, the money is where it's at, and my vote is that we ask council to dedicate funding for these plans.
Unless you have any other projects or changes, we will go on to vote.
Okay.
Okay, we will go to vote. Ex officio Kudo,
EV readiness and equitable access to charging infrastructure, and then promote access and use of, the prioritize funding for citywide bicycle transportation plan.
okay. Commissioner Bazemore,
Let's do the EV readiness. And then, I think I would need to vote for the prioritizing funding for the citywide bicycle transportation plan.
okay. Commissioner Bartrosu,
I feel like the second item and the last item can be merged. If there's objection to that, or if that changes people's votes, I'll stop. But are people cool with that? Because I'd like to vote for that as one package.
Yeah, is the Vision Zero, that's a pedestrian thing, right? Yeah, pedestrian
That
safety.
hasn't been, it's just roadway safety, so it would be safety improvements for all users of the road. And it hasn't been developed yet.
I think we can combine them.
Yeah, they sound like one
Okay
thing.
with that?
Yeah, they all touch on roadway safety. That's why I was trying to bring it all together. So, okay, so I'll vote for that, and I'll do, EV readiness.
EV readiness.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kartunian?
EV readiness first, and I'll go with prioritize funding.
Okay. Commissioner Pinkerton?
Same things.
Okay. And Chair Warner?
EV readiness and equitable access to public transportation.
Okay. Your top Commissioner Bazemore and ex officio Kudo, does changing the wording of this project affect your vote?
No.
No.
Okay, and your top two projects are EV readiness and equitable access to charging infrastructure and prioritize funding for citywide bicycle transportation plan, pedestrian plan, and Vision Zero plan. Going on to the next activity, which is activity 4, choosing a lead. So what we will do is you will now choose a lead for each priority, and some of the role expectations when choosing a lead for each priority is that these lead or leads will be advocates for each priority. So that means they'll be keeping informed of relevant city issues and items related to each priority. They're going to be people who will be staying top of innovation developments outside of the city to be able to bring fresh ideas into the priorities. And they're also going to be the ones who are going to be leading the charge on the commission for the execution of each priority. So for your directions for this one is that you will be able to select 1 to 2 commissioners for each priority. You have 5 priorities, so you can choose 1 commissioner for each priority, or if you think that some priorities are super big, you can choose 2 commissioners per priority. And ex officios, of course, can also be can join with a lead. And then we suggest that your choice and selection for each priority aligns with that commissioner's knowledge and interest, so we'd recommend that. And lastly, you have 5 minutes to decide the lead or leads for each priority. And your time starts now.
If anybody has strong preferences, maybe they should speak first.
I would like to help with the green spaces and urban heat island. I feel like I have enough. I'm trying to, that's like my area of interest right now for studying, so I definitely feel like I can stay on top of it.
I'm interested in public outreach only because that's a large part of what I do now for my job, but unless somebody else has a preference for it.
Well, let me start by saying that, like, we should add as many names on this as we talk this out, and then we can whittle it down later. I don't want to exclude people if there's already 1 or 2 names on this. So hopefully we can do that. I'll go with mobility, and I have an interest in water conservation as well.
Do you have a number 1 and a number 2 choice?
Mobility 1, water 2.
Thank you.
Oh, and for the public outreach, I just think a student commissioner should be one of the people to lead that part. So I would be happy to. I'm sure Mike would as well, but we can talk about that some other time.
Would this be 1 or 2 for you?
I will say 2.
Thank you.
I will put my name down for water conservation as number 1. And then the energy emissions reduction 2. And I would even go so far as to add a 3rd one, unless that's going to mix things up too much, but I would put down
recommend-
mobility for 3. Yeah.
In my case, I'll go energy emission reduction as 1, and water conservation as 2.
Chair and Vice Chair?
So I would like to choose water conservation as 1 and urban heat island as 2.
Commissioner?
No.
The other way around. Yeah. Okay.
Commissioner Pinkerton, would you like to put your name down elsewhere, or are you happy with public outreach?
Well, I put water conservation, actually, yeah, water conservation is second choice.
So from looking at this list, for water conservation, I'd suggest going with Commissioner Bazemore and Chair Werner, since that is both their top choices. Commissioner Bazemore and Commissioner Cartoonian will go with energy emissions reduction. And then Commissioner Kudo, ex officio Kudo can go to green spaces. And then mobility could be Commissioner Bartrosu, unless you want your name along 2 items.
So we also have to consider Commissioner Borisov.
Ex officio, yes.
Sorry, I think ex officio
can-
Borisov. So
he can-
maybe this is tentative at this time, and we can confirm up once he's back on the dais. I'll
Yes,
leave it
we
up to the
can
chair to make that
confirm
decision.
with him, but we can say that the preliminary list is this.
I have a question for the public outreach. Could we have both student ex officios for that one and have 3 total?
Would you be willing to bold them,
I
Elizabeth?
will edit it
Or
if
just,
you give me
yeah,
a moment.
thank you.
Yes.
This is an interesting distribution because water conservation was our 3rd choice, I think, when we, right? But
Well, once we saw the projects, it was like, oh, I want to do that.
So trying to have it so that no commissioner is on more than 1, except for ex officio Kudo, unless we can have it as the leads as this.
And you could add me to the urban heat island ones, so we have continuity after the ex officios term ends, but
Would you like to still, I guess, co-lead number 3? Or how would we do that?
Yeah, there's different projects that are involved in that. Like, I'm particularly interested in the revamping the landscape ordinance, and I have a background in that, and so, but there were other projects, so maybe we, divide up the different projects within that category.
Yeah, we can do that. We can, as we flesh out the projects a bit more, we can introduce additional leads. So as again, this is not the end of it today. This is the beginning of the process.
we finished early.
Okay, so these are your leads. And next up would be public comment.
Well, would we have a lead for the different activities? Like, we discussed the different,
Each lead would be for each priorities. So these leads would be the leads for each priority and responsible for the various projects.
oh, okay, so then the ones that have more than one person, those projects could be divvied up among.
Essentially think of these people, they could be an ad hoc committee. They can work together and figure out how they want to execute the projects. It's up to the commissioners for each priority.
Okay.
I might throw my hat in the ring if Commissioner Bartrasov is willing to also be on the mobility group, if that's okay.
I don't know, Cole. I don't know. Yes, absolutely. Yes, let's do it.
Sounds good.
Team BB.
Great.
For the record, I'm not offended that no one wants to be on energy emission reduction. It is a,
It is your area.
All right.
We're just intimidated by you, sir.
So these are your leads who can work together since we have no quorum for each priority. And these are leads would be responsible for executing and ensuring the projects are hitting the deadlines. Going next, we have public comments. We do have one caller on the line. How much time would you like to give that caller?
3 minutes.
Okay. Hello, Richmond? Hello, Richmond? Hello? Richmond, are you on the line? Hello, can you hear us, Richmond? Are you on the line? Hello? Well, I guess they may not be on the line. If you'd like to continue, would you like to keep public comment open?
Yes, in case they connect. Or were they holding for a long time, or we could have
don't know.
taken them earlier? Okay. Okay.
I'll put them on hold, and if they come back, we can bring them on again. All right, so to summarize, your 5 priorities for your 2023 Commission Work Plan are 1, public outreach, 2, energy emissions and reductions, 3, water conservation, 4, green spaces / urban heat island, and 5, mobility. And you decided to define them as, for public outreach, so you defined their priority as to develop and participate in initiatives, events, and activities that inform and educate and engage community members on relevant, actually your definition was this one. To develop and participate in initiatives, activities, and educational events that inform, educate, and engage community members and staff on relevant city and sustainability goals and issues. You decided to define energy emissions as, for your goal, your priority for regarding energy emissions is to combat climate change and improve air quality in the city by supporting the reduction of greenhouse gases from stationary and mobile emission sources. You decided to, for your water conservation priority, to promote policy, strategies, and educational activities that conserve water resources and reduce water consumption. And you decided for your green spaces priority to support the development and expansion of vegetative spaces in the city to promote connections with nature and to reduce urban temperatures due to the built environment. You decided to, for mobility, to promote strategies that increase access to safe, reliable, and clean transportation around the city using zero and low emission methods. For your projects, you decided that your top 2 projects for public outreach are, your top 3 projects for public outreach are tree planting events, student sustainability ambassadors, and donation and e-waste collection drive. For energy emissions and reduction projects, you decided that your top 2 projects will be to reduce carbon emissions of current buildings and the demand response program. You decided for water conservation projects to reduce water usage and focus on revisit landscaping ordinances. For your green spaces / urban heat island project, you decided to focus on increasing urban tree canopy by 25% over 10 years and expand mature indigenous tree protections and to increase green space and access to nature. For mobility projects, you decided to prioritize funding for citywide bicycle plan, transportation plan, pedestrian plan, and Vision Zero plan, and to support EV readiness and equitable access to charging infrastructure. And your leads for each priority are for public outreach. You just chose Commissioner Pinkerton, ex officio Kudo, and ex officio Borisov. Ex officio Borisov will be able to also say what he'd like to join later on. And you also decided your lead for energy emissions reduction will be Commissioner Cartoonian. Your lead for water conservations are Commissioner Bazemore and Chair Werner. Your leads for Green Spaces / Urban Heat Island are ex officio Kudo and Chair Werner, and your leads for mobility are Commissioner Barchesov and Commissioner Bazemore. This is your 2023 annual work plan. Do we need a motion? Do we have a motion and second to have staff prepare your annual work plan with this information, and we would then bring it back in the next commission meeting to make any last changes, and you can then submit that plan to City Council.
So moved.
Second.
Great, thank you.
Thank
And we
you,
need-
Elizabeth. This was a lot to pull together.
Yeah.
It worked really well.
Oh, you made it painless, I have to admit. I was looking forward to it originally. but- Well, I mean, you know,
And we also need a vote.
yeah.
Need your vote?
We need your vote. So
Okay.
Commissioner Bazemore,
Yes.
Commissioner Bartrosov,
Yes.
Commissioner Kartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner Pinkerton,
Yes.
and Chair Werner.
Yes.
Okay.
Congratulations on
Thank
developing your first work plan,
And thank you again, Elizabeth,
Yes,
for
absolutely.
making it as painless as you did.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is, and this will be a quick one, is 5B, nomination of a project development team member for updating the citywide bicycle transportation plan and Vision Zero plan. One, motion for the Sustainability Commission to nominate a commissioner to be part of the project development team for updating the citywide bicycle transportation plan and Vision Zero plan.
Okay. I would like to nominate Commissioner Bartrusov, but as an alternate to have Commissioner Bazemore in case Commissioner Bartrusov was unavailable for some reason. Is that a possibility? Can we do it that way?
Yep.
Okay.
that is a possibility, yes.
Any-
I'm flattered. However, I actually have another avenue in which I can participate in the advisory group, and so I'd like to nominate Cole to be on the group as an official Sustainability Commission contributor.
Oh, okay, that's good to know. So I accept the friendly amendment to my motion and will instead nominate Commissioner Bazemore to be that delegate to this commission, but would be interested in knowing if someone else wants to be the alternate.
Commissioner,
Do
you
I
agree to?
Do I accept? Thank you. Yeah, I am honored as well by the nomination. Thank you.
Okay. When do they meet?
It starts in January and it goes through September next year, and they'll be meeting monthly. Meeting times are roughly between 6 to 8 p.m., but that hasn't been fully determined yet. And they don't think the day will probably be a Thursday. I don't know, the day hasn't been determined yet, but so.
It likely would not
I think
conflict with
the
commission.
letter, the letter said it
Thursday.
could perhaps be the third Thursday of the month.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Well, I wouldn't mind being your backup then if for some reason you weren't able to do that, just so someone's representing us, so.
So the
So the
motion
motion is to nominate Commissioner Bazemore, and with myself as the alternate, should he be unable to attend one of the sessions.
do you
Second.
have a second?
Second.
Okay, now do we need a vote?
Commissioner Bazemore,
Yes.
Commissioner Bartrosov,
Yes.
Commissioner Kartunian,
Yes.
Commissioner Pinkerton,
Yes.
Commissioner Werner.
Yes.
Great, that passes. Next item is 6, Sustainability Office updates.
We have no significant updates since the last meeting.
Plastics ordinance?
We have no significant updates since the last
Maybe
meeting.
Elizabeth should give the update. Okay.
Thank
Then
you.
The next item is adjournment, and I just need a motion and a second.
I'll move the item.
Oh, actually, before we adjourn, there was some thought to not meeting in December. Just wanted to get everyone's feedback on that.
Meet January.
I'm sorry, January, I know, still feels like November, but, okay, so.
The date?
Yeah, the date would be.
It would be January 6th,
Yeah,
would be the
6th.
first.
So there was some concern that staff may not have, they're going to be off a lot during the holidays, may not have time to develop a full agenda worth of business to be worth their while, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
No objection.
Or if there's something we want to agendize that would take a significant amount of time and was urgent, then this would be a good time to mention that. But
That's a long time to, so we wouldn't meet again until February. That's an awful long time. Could we have a super short meeting? I mean,
If you wish, the item.
It's up to you.
Yeah, the item could be just to approve your work plan.
well, one thing I would like to discuss, and I apologize for being late, I got stuck in traffic. We make a lot of suggestions in these meetings, but my question is, I think we talked about this briefly before, but how do our comments get conveyed to council if they do get conveyed, or to other department managers and things? And I'm just wondering, something to discuss maybe for Tuesday, because part of this is closing the circle, right? I mean, we're here to assist council and get our comments and ideas to them. So I'm wondering, David, do you submit the notes, meeting notes formally, or should we try to see if we could have a regular, 10-minute presentation that you give at council, or the commissioners could on a rotating basis?
So, Commissioner Pinkerton, thank you for that question. So where the councils directly ask this commission for a recommendation, when we receive that recommendation from the commission, we'll pass that information back to City Council. Where the commission members ask us to do follow-up items with staff internally, we will pass those requests on to staff and follow up staff internally to get their response. I think the point you're asking is like when the commission discusses an issue and makes a recommendation, how does that get to City Council if City Council hasn't asked? One of the reasons for doing the exercise that we did today is this report will now go to City Council, the work plan, so they'll know going forward that when you discuss items on the work plan, that information will feed its way into City Council. But yes, there has been that slight disconnect.
What about the meeting minutes? Do those regularly get submitted to the council members?
The meeting minutes do not get, but
okay.
they are public record.
Right, okay. Thank you.
Question as well, the tracking sheet that we looked at the last meeting, I believe, so does this, now that we have the work plan, kind of take precedence over what was on that and the priorities, I guess, that had been previously identified by this commission?
We will revisit that tracking sheet along with this work plan but we'll still track all the projects that the commission has asked us and the information, because you've asked for information that will be outside the work plan, and that information will still come to the commission, so we still try to get that information to the commission.
could
Thank
we
you.
add a column to that spreadsheet that says like which priority, that it falls into or something, or
Yes.
color coded or something like that, maybe to tie the two together?
We can do that.
See if the caller is still.
Oh, can we see if the caller might have come back on? Is there a way to do that?
Staff, we can try. Again, staff did check to see if the caller's online, but if you want to check again, we can check right now. Okay. Hello, Richmond? Hello, Richmond, are you there? Hello, Richmond, you're on the air. Hello, Richmond? Richmond, are you there? There's like a 30-second delay if he's watching on YouTube, so
Yeah.
you can stay on, or you can close public comments.
But public comments has closed. I think it's closed already previously.
No, we're leaving it open because we didn't know if that person was
He
going
was
to come
calling
back,
for
but it's okay.
the work plan.
I had a-
Richmond, are you there? Would you like to close public comments then? Yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
And I also had a question about the work plan, because ex officio Borslov isn't here today. When would he choose what plan he wants to work on? Would that be at the next meeting, or would that be like before then?
That'll be at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So I
if we would
recommend,
meet in December, it could be about, I know we wanted to massage the wording on some of these, and, we're kind of feeling the pressure of wrapping it up and so on. So, we could go ahead and just wrap that up, and then we can be ready to hit the new year with a more polished plan.
well, the next meeting will be January.
Yeah, January,
So you want to
at the
complete
beginning
the
of the
work
year,
plan?
but yes, yes.
So the agenda item will be the work plan for the January meeting? Okay.
Yeah, so I think we'll go ahead and meet and, okay.
Next item?
Next item is adjournment. I just need a motion and second.
So move.
Second?
Thank you. The meeting has adjourned at 8 o'clock.
Okay.